So I would like to discuss computational neuroscience today and to specifically discuss a theory called predictive coding theory, which is an idea that has been making waves in the neuroscience community as of recent and is being posited as a theory that might be able to explain all of brain function. And so by extension, might also be able to explain mental processes and should have implications for mental disorders as well. What I'd like to do is to present the theory, the basic concepts, and to see ways in which it might have relevance for our field of psychiatry. And once again, this is a very brief introduction to this theory. So without further ado, what is predictive coding theory? I would say that there are three fundamental ideas. The very first idea is that the theory posits that the brain is generative. And what that means is that the brain is constantly generating models of the environment. And it uses these models to predict signals emanating from the environment. So there are two pieces here. There is a brain and the models it generates, and there's the environment and the signals that proceed from the environment. And the brain is constantly using its models to predict signals coming from the environment. The second key idea is that this model signal interaction occurs in a hierarchical brain. So the brain is hierarchical and basically it's organized from more concrete features, more concrete objects, specific individual objects, proceeding all the way to more abstract, universal, generalized models, if you will. And that the model signal comparison flows up and down this hierarchy. So that's the second main idea. Before we talk about the third main idea, I wanted to talk about the environment. I just want to spend a second there because I think the environment is a very important aspect of mental functioning, very important aspect of neuroscience. I think the environment is split into three main divisions. So you could have the environment that is external to our bodies, the external environment or the world that comprises physical objects, and the social environment, for instance. The second main division would be the environment that is within our bodies, bound by our skins, but outside our brain. That comprises most of our internal organ systems. This is the internal environment. And then the final division of the environment, I call this the intrinsic environment that basically comprises the brain itself and the various hierarchies we had discussed, the ideas, concepts, abstractions we hold in our mind or in our brains. So these to me are the three main divisions of the environment: the external environment of the world, the internal environment of our body or our internal organ systems, and the intrinsic environment of the brain itself. To ease into the third point. So we had mentioned that you have the models that are generated by the brain to predict signals from the environment. But what happens with this model signal comparison? What happens is that two things could occur. One is that the model of the environment could correctly predict the actual reality of the environment itself. And so you could have a perception if that happens, or there could be a mismatch. That is, the model and the signals do not align. And what happens if this is the case is that a third variable is generated, a prediction error. The third idea states that what the brain then does is that the brain constantly tries to minimize the prediction error. So that's a third and perhaps one of the, if not the most key concept about predictive coding theory. If there's a prediction error and your brain is constantly trying to minimize the prediction error, how does your brain do this? Well, your brain could change one of two variables. You could say it could change the model or it could change the signal. And if the brain changes the model, that is known as model updating in order to fit the environment. If it changes the signal, some say this corresponds to the phenomenon of action, of movement. So the brain constantly tries to minimize the prediction error. And the whole idea here is that this process of prediction error minimization is a fundamental drama that occurs in your brain. And this process occurs at every level of the hierarchy. So we now have that the brain could change the model or could change the signal in order to minimize prediction error. But how does it know which one to change? Well, the very first thing I should note is that our language has not been very precise. I know I've been saying signals emanate from the environment. Actually, what's passed up the environment are not signals, but prediction error. And the whole idea being that when your model tries to predict the environment and there's a mismatch, an error is generated, and then the brain refers the error to higher levels of the hierarchy, hoping that some process at a higher level will be able to minimize the prediction error. So really, the two variables in question here are the model and prediction error. So how does the brain know which one to choose? If to change the model or if to give more weight to the prediction error? And it does so by looking at the degree of uncertainty in either of these variables. Another way to gauge the uncertainty is to reverse that, is to look at the precision. So it weighs the relative precision of the model and the precision of the prediction error. And this process of weighing precision of either the prediction error or the model corresponds to what researchers believe is the process of attention. So that's a very key aspect as well in this discussion. But this is just a rough, very brief introduction into some of the essential concepts in this theory. And so let us summarize really quickly. Three main ideas. One, the brain is generative, constantly generating models of the environment to correctly predict the environment. The brain is hierarchically organized, and this model environment comparison occurs at every level of the hierarchy. And finally, brain is constantly trying to minimize prediction error. And we can see how, from this perspective, we could have insights into what mental disorders might be. We might look at mental disorders from a computational perspective. So one may look at mental disorders as impairments in the body's ability to dynamically minimize prediction error. Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching.